on the lake, the reservoir. Not so long ago, we were walking west on the bike trail, and we came to the new bridge, or the old bridge, which has been refurbished just up the street, up the way there. And I said, "Oh, look, they've done a reconstruction of the bridge." And Syed sort of looked up, and he kind of grumbled, "Oh, look at the abutments, look at the deck." Well, he was right. Looking through an engineer's eyes, he could see that refurbishment was not going to last. So I wanted to talk about Syed the engineer and give a little bit of a view of the world seen through an engineer's eyes. So Syed got his bachelor's degree in 1965 at the University of Jammu in Kashmir. And I have to fill this in a little bit on his other educational achievements, but where he really worked as a structural engineer was at Edinburgh, University of Edinburgh, where he achieved a PhD in structural engineering. And he worked under the supervision of a fellow named A.W. Hendry. Hendry was an eminent structural engineer, and he was interested in brickwork. So brickwork is the construction technique where you use bricks and mortar to build mostly vertical walls. And Hendry was working with a committee that was part of the British Structural Engineering Association, and that committee was trying to standardize on construction materials. If you build the bricks in a certain way and you build a mortar in a certain way, how much strength can you achieve from a structure that you're building? And this is important because bricks are a wonderful building material. You can dig up some mud out of a hole with a shovel and pat it with your hands and you've got a brick. Or you can use much higher tech, fire it, and make strong bricks. So there's a standardizing process for bricks. And there's a standardizing process for mortar and so forth. And so Henry and his association were trying to understand, well, as we design structures, how can we understand whether we're building them strong enough? If you build a structure like the pyramids, it takes a lot of stone. If you underbuild the structure, well, it might fall down. So Syed's interest in this was in looking at a mathematical formulation for the strength of a wall and trying to relate that to the strength of the materials that go into that wall. Now, he was particularly interested in thin walls because, aren't we all? A thin wall doesn't need as big a foundation, doesn't need as many bricks. It's cheaper. You don't have to carry so many bricks up to the top of the scaffold to lay them in. So thin walls are what he worked on in his thesis. Now, the thing about a wall is if you load a thin wall, it deflects. And that deflection is actually a sine curve, a mathematical sine with boundary conditions below and above. So now we've got it. We can do a mathematical analysis of a sine curve, and we can look at, well, how is the stress going to distribute through that wall as it deflects? And as a brick wall deflects, you can see a characteristic pattern of little cracks in the wall. So what Syed worked hard on the mathematical formulation of the theory of the strength of the wall, but he also designed a series of experiments, which sounded like they actually should have been quite fun, to crush the wall. So at Edinburgh, they have an enormous machine, a big press that can put thousands of tons of force as if it had a big building above the wall. And then he outfitted that with little dial gauges that can measure the deflection. And then he tested to destruction. He tested until the wall, with a big bang, collapsed. And he built up a series of data points that are the basis of a lot of the structural engineering standards that are now used today all around the world. The British Association published this material. And if you travel through India and Africa, pull into town, a little village in the middle of nowhere, there's piles of bricks. Bricks are really an important construction material, so this has an influence all around the world. And that's nice, but do we believe it? So that's sort of the capstone of his thesis work. He built a 6-story building with thin walls of bricks, just a single brick wide. And that seems to me quite amazing. But one of the things they discovered, well, is, or they didn't discover, they knew that If you build a wall with an angle in it, it's much stronger. It doesn't collapse, doesn't deflect. So for the same amount of weight, you can get a much more economical structure. And if you want to look at the world through an engineer's eyes, just as you walk out the front door of this building, look across the street, look at all the bricks, or go next door and get on the 77 bus and ride down to Harvard Square, and you'll see a great feast of brickwork. So if you can imagine looking at it through Syed's eyes, and him looking at it saying, I could build it better, I could build it stronger, and maybe save some money at the same time.
Engineering lesson 101. And may I invite Geeta to please come and share her thoughts together.
Arvind and I have known Tayyaba for at least 37 years. When her older brother, Syed Hasan, fondly known as Sadhu or simply Bhaijan, moved to the US permanently in 2010, our friendship with her deepened. The elusive Dr. Tayyaba Hasan was now reincarnated for us as the kid sister of the sweetest Lucknowi gentleman we've ever known so closely in recent times. Arvind and I found our childhood roots in his vocabulary. Words like kambakht, na cheez, na layak, wahiyat, oof, spoken with such a gentle tongue that he might as well have been saying words of praise and admiration. Most of those words mean stupid, nincompoop. He even described his beloved sister with great affection, saying, "वो बड़ी सख्त हैं." Sakt means strict. Sakt she had to be, as Sadhu Bhaijan loved a fine drink, rich spicy kebabs, and cared not at all for his fragile health. Arvind and I were partners in this criminal behavior, and when we learned that he was very unwell, and not just occasionally suffering from the acid reflux we all are prone to, we three tried collectively to reform ourselves. 3 years ago, on a cold, blustery afternoon, I bumped into Sadhu Bhaijan at the Porter Square bookstore. He had not been diagnosed of anything serious then. I was in a rush to leave, but when he said with his disarming smile, "Geeta ji, aap kaisi hain? Geeta, how are you?" We sat together over coffee and cake, and for the next 2 hours, he had me hooked to his life story. I learned his family history rooted in Pratapgarh, Lucknow, the partition, and the separation of his immediate family after his mother's premature death, and then the journey via Scotland and Portugal to the apartment he rented in the scholar's house in Cambridge. I did ask him why he would not simply stay with Tayyaba in that lovely home she'd been taking so much trouble over such a long time. He said simply, in his particular lehza, his particular style of speaking, he said, "बहुत दूर है, और सीढ़ी चढ़नी पड़ती है। वाकई में मैं वहाँ अकेला रह जाऊँगा। तैयबा इतना काम और सफ़र करती हैं। यहाँ मैं जैसे बाहर निकला, लोग मिलते हैं, बस और टी में मैं कहीं भी जा सकता हूँ." He meant that Tayyaba's house was too far away, which was only in Arlington from Cambridge, and that he would have to climb steps, and Tayyaba was so busy that he'd be just alone. And here, he'd just step out onto Mass Avenue and get onto the bus and tea, and go wherever he wanted. He was the quintessential old worldly gentleman who could connect with everyone with his gentle, kind ways. His soft, cultured speech made alive the old Lucknow many people complain is lost. But Arvind and I were lucky to find it right here in Cambridge. We went to several Hindustani music concerts together, and we'd exchange and share our love of Sufi music by a continuous stream of emails. Befittingly, his email address was sayyadlajawab@gmail.com. Not Sayyid Lajawab, means that there's no words for it. So So that was his email address. One other thing we really bonded over was that we both hated Modi. I felt lucky that I had my big brother to share my utter disdain of that man, and our friendship grew closer. Another favorite person of mine, Anu Bhaiya, Arvind's older brother in Lucknow, also shared my dislike for Modi. When Bhaijan was in Lucknow in the summer of 2014, he made a special effort to meet him. They got along famously. Last August, we were with Anu Bhaiya when we got the news of Bhaijan's death. Arvind and I mourned his loss with Anu Bhaiya. Sadly, we flew to India again last week as Anu Bhaiya was taken to the ICU and passed away a few hours after we arrived in Lucknow. Our two brothers are together now, where they are free and are at peace, sheltered from the behudgi on this earth, the vulgarity. Sadly, we flew to India again last week. There are so many memories that flood my heart when I think of Bhaijan. One evening in early August, I went to his assisted living home to tie him a rakhi. As usual, I arrived much later than I had said I would. He was fast asleep in his armchair with a packet in front of him. I placed the little festive thali on the coffee table. I waited for him to wake up, during which I realized that perhaps this would be the last time I would see his kind face. He woke up and was really pleased. He folded his hands together and waited for me to tie the rakhi, after which I gave him a piece of cut mango and did a little aarti with a lit diya on the thali. He received it like a big brother would, and then fished out an envelope with $60. I told him that it was not about gifts, just about my sisterly love for him. He said, "Janta hu, to isse Maya ke liye kuch kharid lijiye. She is so cute." He said, "I know, why don't you buy something for your granddaughter Maya, who's 15 months old." Then he opened another packet. It was a dozen colorful glass bangles, too small for my wrist,